The movie opens in New York City. We see Dan, who is really good at selling cars because he sees the little things others might miss. He once again wins the title of Salesman of the Month. He has a wife named Jessica and 3 kids, Nina, Kyle, and Max. When Dan and Jessica share a kiss, someone takes a picture of them without permission. The person posts the photo online and starts bothering Dan. Things get worse when the person spills a drink on Dan and insults Jessica. Dan walks away because he hates violence. Jessica finds an outlet in boxing, where an accidental punch to her sparring partner leads to an unexpected friendship, opening up to her new friend Gwen, who is also a travel agent. While shopping, a suspicious man appears to be watching Dan cautiously, drawing Dan's attention. Dan is quick to react when the man moves in to attack. The locals are surprised, and even his neighbors notice something different about Dan. At home, Dan opens up a secret compartment containing guns, outdated passports, and a cash alarm. Dan contacts Augie, a former associate, to arrange new identities for his family, indicating they're in danger. Augie suspects the threat comes from Dan's old boss, McCaffrey, and advises Dan to disappear as soon as possible. It turns out Dan is an ex-assassin. He has kept it a secret from his family. Dan seeks out Nina at an editorial meeting, only to discover she quit 3 months ago after a small incentive. Her friend sold her out. He finds Nina under the bleachers, upset that she abandoned her dream. But there's no time to dwell on this as they need to collect her brother from the chess club. Dan is disappointed to find him at their neighbor's house, along with his gaming equipment. Dan tells his kids that they are going to Vegas. In the middle of Jessica's work, Dan persuades her to go on the spontaneous trip she so much desired. But as they are about to leave the parking lot, McCaffrey's men are already waiting. Dan skillfully evades the pursuers. A moment later, they catch up to Dan, but he still manages to maneuver around without his family suspecting a thing. Dan drives into his workplace and closes the gates on his pursuers. He then lifts the car up and finds the tracker, which he hides just in time for the pursuers to miss him and his car. The family members are still unaware of the situation. Dan sticks the tracker on his colleague's car and tells him to give it a spin on the highway. In order to remain anonymous, Dan seizes everyone's phones. At the travel agency, the clerk locates maps for their route. Meanwhile, McCaffrey personally visits Dan's house and is certain that his family is still unaware of the situation. At the same time, while talking with his sister, a stranger recognizes Kyle from his streaming career and asks for a picture. Dan notices Kyle and the girl snapping selfies, and he anticipates McCaffrey's imminent pursuit, prompting him to continue driving to evade detection. McCaffrey has recruited additional men to pursue Dan, and he briefly catches sight of 3 of them. While his family is asleep, he prepares to use lethal force by turning on music on all of their headphones. Despite being shot in the mirror, he manages to remove one, narrowly avoiding a crash and bumping into one of them. After driving all night, Dan finally closes his eyes. But his family is awake. Half a mile away from the college Nina wants to attend. She argues her way into seeing it. Jessica even proudly displays her keg stand skills. The main reason Nina wanted to visit the campus was because her boyfriend, Trevor, was on a campus tour. Dan notices a German man on his phone and believes he could be a McCaffrey operative. However, he realizes his mistake when a different individual unexpectedly attacks him. Dan manages to tackle the assassin and quickly returns to his family to continue his journey. Meanwhile, Nina visits Trevor. She finds him cheating on her. She returns crying, and Dan teaches her a martial art. Later, Dan calls up Augie, who is on his way to deliver Dan's and his family's new identities. Sometimes later, Kyle joins him, and they finally discuss his career as a streamer. Kyle is eager to demonstrate his skills by competing in laser tag with Dan. They initially placed a wager on achieving 3 kills. As an ex-assassin, Dan should have an easy time securing the first and second tags. Kyle, on the other hand, retaliates with 2 of his own, but Dan secures the final tag. In Las Vegas, they are staying in a top city suite. Dan meets with Augie, who hands him their new identities and a one-way flight to Vancouver. Dan prepares himself to tell Jessica the truth over a romantic dinner, while the kids babysit Max. McCaffrey's men are already aware of Dan's location. Kyle visits the HyperX gaming arena, but McCaffrey's men are there as well. While Nina gets comfortable with one of the gamers who gave his spot to Kyle, Kyle is single-handedly destroying the enemy team. Dan tries to tell Jessica the truth, but every moment is filled with interruptions. He decides to postpone it a bit more and go gambling with her, but after a while, He decides to check up on the kids, but his call goes unanswered, so they head back up. Dummies trick Jessica into believing they are sleeping. Jessica goes to freshen up and puts on some romantic music. That's exactly when McCaffrey's men strike. Dan throws vodka and shoots it, setting the assailants on fire and neutralizing them. But Jessica is taken hostage. Dan puts down his gun, but slightly grabs a knife. While the guy is gossiping, Dan neutralizes him as well. Jessica runs to the kids, but she finds the dummies. She understands that they need to search in Hyperx, given Kyle's constant mention of it. Kyle manages to finish the game with 30 kills. Just as the game ends, their parents arrive and pick them up. Dan reveals to his family that he's a covert assassin, and his ex-colleagues are here to kill him. But the kids don't believe it until they are shot at. Dan neutralizes her as they attempt to take cover behind a car, but her vest keeps her alive, prompting them to fire another quick round. Dan finally revealed his history of being McCaffrey's mercenary, and that he's killed 42 people. And now they understand why Dan never wanted to leave the city, and is so against social media, so he hands them their new identities. Nina now assumes the role of Molly, while Kyle adopts the persona of Van. The family refuses to accept him. Jessica entrusts him with the children's care. She reaches out to Gwen for assistance, leaving Dan to stand guard outside until dawn. Despite Dan's attempts to clarify that it's unsafe, McCaffrey will follow. Jessica simply instructs him to ensure safety and avoid any potential danger. When Jessica arrives, she discovers that Gwen is a powerful woman. Suddenly, Gwen is talking about her ex, who made a whole new life with an insufferable woman. As a result, she made friends with the woman and waited for her to walk into her trap. McCaffrey is here. He unexpectedly calls Dan, revealing that his family is in captivity. He arranges a meeting in an abandoned hotel. McCaffrey's henchmen are all over the place. Arriving at the penthouse, it turns out that McCaffrey is Dan's father. McCaffrey wanted Dan dead because he abandoned him, but for the past few days, Dan wasted every man McCaffrey sent at him. His father wants him back. If he refuses, he will not let his family go. Dan agrees to do it. Dan's kid wants Jessica to protect Dan, even though they wanted to cut ties. The kids try to convince their mother that they can't abandon Dan. Jessica begins changing Max's diaper, stuffing it in the bad guy's face, and sending him off to his death. They go to get Dan back, while McCaffrey goes to make some arrangements. Gwen tries to seduce Dan, but he knows her tactics. The family is there to rescue him as he puts Gwen to sleep. Dan apologizes for keeping secrets from Jessica, and promises to always tell her the truth. McCaffrey notices that something is wrong. The henchmen are approaching, so he instructs his family to head to the roof, where he will handle their situation. Kyle uses the drone to spot McCaffrey's men, and relays information to Dan, who skillfully deals with them. McCaffrey notices that the drone is helping Dan, and he wakes Gwen up to find the family. Dan tells his dad to call it off, but he doesn't listen. Jessica conceals the children and fires as the elevator arrives, while Gwen remains relaxed on the left side. Kyle says there are 9 guys left. Dan dismisses them one by one. McCaffrey finally shoots down the drone, and during the prolonged fight, Gwen comes victorious. McCaffrey knocks Dan down, giving him a clear shot at him. Gwen corners the kids, giving Jessica the strength to lift up the debris. Dan manages to get bullets out of McCaffrey's gun, so they resort to stick-to-hand combat. Gathering her inner strength, Jessica picks up a bamboo stick and goes for an athletic jump, but fails. Jessica tries again, and she successfully hits her. McCaffrey beats Dan in a fight and grabs a gun to finish him off. However, the family enters, and Nina tells Dan they still care about him. Then Dan kills McCaffrey. The family gets back together,